Sometimes you gotta do that. I was fucked up, fucked up, fucked up, fucked up. I was fucked up, fucked up, fucked up, fucked up. I was fucked up, fucked up, fucked up, fucked up. I was fucked up, fucked up, fucked up. When I did it, I was fucked up, fucked up, fucked up, fucked up. I was fucked up, fucked up, fucked up, fucked up. I was fucked up, fucked up, fucked up, fucked up. I was fucked up, fucked up, fucked up, fucked up. When I did it, I was fucked up. When I did it, I was fucked up. When I did it, I was fucked up, fucked up, fucked up. When I did it, I was fucked up. When I did it, I was fucked up. When I did it, I was fucked up, fucked up, fucked up. I was fucked up, fucked up, fucked up, fucked up. I was fucked up, fucked up, fucked up, fucked up. I was fucked up, fucked up, fucked up, fucked up. When I did that.
To apologize. It's too
When I did it, I was fucked up.
late to apologize.
I was fucked up.
It's too late.
When I did it, I was fucked up. I was fucked up. I mean, I hit rock bottom, but I make no excuses. My behavior on that video is inexcusable.
I'm not going to call P. Diddy a bitch. 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 Sean Combs is a bitch. Yeah. Sean Combs is a bitch. They bitches too. Sean Combs is a bitch, 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 yeah. Bitch, bitch. Yeah. Sean Combs is a bitch, 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 yeah. Bitch, yeah. Bitch, bitch. You don't hit women when you're a man. You don't hit women when you're a man. P. Diddy a bitch. 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 Sean Combs is a bitch. Yeah. I'm not going to call P. Diddy a bitch or any other name like that. But I ain't gonna stop anybody else from doing it. I'm not gonna malign them. P. Diddy a bitch. 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 P. Diddy.
All right. Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning back in once again to the original Queen Ahmadiyyah Shakur show. I'm your host, Queen Ahmadiyyah Shakur, and this is your daily vitamins. All right. So let's get into it. Everybody hit that like button. Thank you so kindly. That's how you can show your appreciation for the stream. Okay. Please be sure to do that. All right. Now, before we get started, let's have a brief word from my sponsor at 12 Tribes. And then we're going to talk about Diddy, okay? Because Diddy thinks he's going to walk up out of there, but not so fast, Mr. Combs. All right.
Do not buy 12 Tribes on Earth hair growth oil and hair magic elixir unless you want super healthy, gorgeous hair that grows. They have a whole line of amazing hair growth products, including hair growth leave-in conditioner spray, hair growth shampoo, hair growth spray, and hair growth butter. I'm starting to sense a theme here. They include quality natural ingredients. They smell amazing, and you can see the results for yourself. So if you're looking for healthy hair growth for your natural or relaxed hair, try 12 Tribes on Earth today.
Okay, you can purchase 12 Tribes for your hair at Etsy.com. Just look for Lisa Crafts. You can also find it at Walmart.com. Okay, so let's see who's in here. All right, we got Anita Harrell, the classic one, Leon Gardner, Aqua Girl Rising, Buckhorse DC, 7 is in here. All right, let's get into it. Marie, we the people. All right, Panther Strike is here. Claudette. All right. Shout out to all of my loyal royals and everyone tuned into the Queen. I see you, Sandra and Terry Hitton. Dervis is in the house. Nicole, Deronda. All right. Let's get into it. Everybody hit that like button. Also, don't forget, guys, to double check and make sure that you're still subscribed to the channel, especially if you haven't been receiving those notifications. You know how they be hating on the Queen in the YouTube streets. All right, Easy is here. Oh, hell no. All right, so let's get into it, honey. Let's get into it. Because Diddy's team, if you remember, I read you the court docs where they were filing to try to get certain evidence excluded from the case, basically saying that it was prejudicial, you know, and then they started talking about these different rules of procedure and all of that or whatnot. And then there was the fact that they wanted, or they actually subpoenaed Warner Brothers. Okay, Diddy subpoenaed Warner Brothers for the information, the outtakes, the personal journal entries, diary entries, and any information that he could get his filthy little hands on from the Warner Brothers documentary, or the documentary that was done by their subsidiary, The Downfall of Diddy. Okay, well, the prosecution has joined forces with Warner Brothers, and they too sent a letter to the judge requesting that the judge quash Diddy's entire subpoena, all right, and not grant him anything, because they said basically, you know, it doesn't really, the rules don't even really apply to that. Okay, so like I said, Diddy's trying everything. They're pulling out all the stops. And I pretty much think that the two main things that are going to decide this case, now this is just my opinion, is, for one, the credibility of Cassie. Of course, she is the star witness, okay? She's the star witness for the prosecution. But also, as I told you all yesterday, I believe it was, when I compared Diddy's case to Harvey Weinstein, who, by the way, got one of his charges overturned, and he's up for retrial, okay? I believe they've already started the jury selection process. And so Diddy's case is very similar to Harvey Weinstein's, with the allegations, with him being a, you know, like this powerful mogul who had everybody scared and intimidated, or he could ruin their careers. Everything hung in the balance, depending on how you treated Diddy or whether or not you did what he said. These are the same things that many people said about Harvey Weinstein in Hollywood. And remember, the most important thing about Weinstein's case and Diddy's is the fact that Harvey Weinstein's case was actually overturned because they allowed something called prior bad acts to be admitted into evidence. That's what the prosecution did. They had witnesses who accused Harvey of doing things to them, but their cases were not included in the criminal indictment. So, but they allowed these people to come in and say things about Harvey Weinstein. And of course, they did that to establish a pattern of his nefarious behavior, I'm sure. But with that being said, because it didn't have anything to do with the criminal case, his attorneys were able to then come back on appeal, which they won the appeal, and then they got the retrial that he's now facing. And that may be the same case with Diddy, but here's the thing. If the prosecution is crazy enough to do that in Diddy's case, and I should hope that they aren't, because they should have seen what already happened in Weinstein's case. But of course, we don't know who's all testifying and who some of these witnesses are. But if anybody that filed a civil suit against Diddy and their case has nothing to do with the criminal case, if any of those people testify against Diddy in the criminal case, well, they could do the same thing that Weinstein did. Okay, so remember, I told you all that yesterday. So what we're going to do today is we're going to do a little backtracking. Okay, we're going to go back over some of the things to see if we ourselves can find any inconsistencies in Cassie's story. And I can tell you that I already found one. And I was only looking for 5 minutes. I already found one inconsistency in Cassie's story. And here's the thing. You may say, well, one, that's not a big deal. Well, no, it isn't. But see, if I found one and I just looked for 5 minutes, how many do you think that the defense team has found? Because they're going to be a whole lot more thorough than I am, because they're getting paid for one and they have a lot more to lose. Okay? So what they're going to do, now we already know, of course, it's common sense that they're going to try to discredit Cassie. That's their job. But what they're going to use is likely something that I learned when I was in college for criminal justice. Okay. And it's called the 5-question rule. This is what they use upon cross-examination. Okay. Some of these defense attorneys. Now, with that, they try to impeach the witness during cross-examination. And here's the thing, cross-examination is always my favorite part of any trial, because that's where the theatrics come out. You see, direct examination is no big deal. You know, the prosecutor gets up there talking to their witnesses, asking them a few simple questions. The witnesses answer, that's it, that's all. But when the defense comes and they cross-examine them, or vice versa, when the defense is questioning their witnesses and they're just asking them basic questions, they're answering, but then the prosecution comes for the cross-examination, that's when all hell breaks loose. This is when the theatrics start. This is when the jury sits up straight in their seats and leans forward, making sure not to miss a beat. This is the most exciting part of any trial. Okay? And that's because this is the part where the drama starts, where they go all in. So let's talk about how they're going to try to impeach Cassie. Okay, so everyone hit the like button, please. Please be sure to like and share, if you could be so kind. Now, first of all, let's talk about exactly what impeachment is. Okay, it's to impeach the witness's credibility. So basically that means they're just going to try to discredit or undermine the truthfulness of whatever the person says, make the person, can make it so where the jury doesn't know whether to believe them or not. Okay, and this is typically done by presenting evidence or asking questions that raise doubts about the witness's accuracy, the reliability, or if they have any biases. Okay, that's how that goes. Now, so when they do this, of course, like I said, it's for dramatic purposes. But here are some of the things they tend to do. The first thing is to impeach the witness's credibility, knowledge, or recollection of the story. Okay, you start by pointing out inconsistencies or lack of qualifications. Now, in the case of a lay witness, and a lay witness, which is also, you can call it a fact witness, this is simply a person, not an expert witness, not someone with some sort of expertise, but just basically a person who has firsthand knowledge or firsthand experience of the situation at hand. Okay, so when they're talking to the lay witness, the two primary areas of impeachment are the witness's opportunity to observe or determine, okay, the ability and the ability to accurately recall the events described. So, for example, here's one thing that I'm pretty sure they're going to use to try to discredit Cassie, as far as saying, how do you remember everything in such detail when you were always high off of drugs, or you had an alcohol a problem with alcohol and drugs? Because that's what Cassie said herself. That's in her own lawsuit. These are her own words. So they're going to use these little things, when she was in her lawsuit, because I started reading over it again. Okay, I read over it again today. And basically, Cassie admitted to taking all of these drugs and all this alcohol. She had a serious problem with it. And then later, I don't really think this is in the lawsuit, but it was said that Cassie had such a problem with drugs that her husband had to help her get off of it. Like, she really needed rehab. Okay. So her and Diddy both were abusing substances. Now, of course, she says Diddy was the one supplying her with the copious amounts of drugs and alcohol, but that's not going to be the question. The question is going to be, if you were on all these drugs most of the time, specifically when you had these freak-offs, because she said herself that she would do these things, okay, so that she would participate or could participate in the freak-offs. So they're going to want to know, well, how do you remember everything that happened? Did it give you these drugs? Did you just take them yourself? They're going to be asking those kinds of questions. But the main thing is they're going to be asking that so they can try to act as though maybe she can't recall everything. Maybe you don't know exactly what happened. And then I'm going to play the audio of Roger Bonds, because some of the things that he said were corroborated by Chopper. And some of those things that they both say, Cassie never said. It's not in her lawsuit. I've never heard her say it. She conveniently left that part out. They're going to make a big deal out of that. Okay, so we're going to get into exactly what that is in just a moment. But another thing they do that they'll likely do is introduce additional evidence that's helpful to the jury's understanding of the case. And we won't, we of course won't know what this is until the trial starts. But for example, the defense's liability expert may present, something that basically is gonna make Cassie look bad. Okay, gonna make her look bad. For example, Diddy's charged with all these illegal acts. They're gonna start bringing these things up too. Asking Cassie, well, you were involved in the freak offs and you say that Diddy made you do them, that he coerced you into doing them. But you also said in your lawsuit that you were the one that went out and found these S workers. You're the one that went and looked them up. You were in charge of picking these people out and all of that. They're going to make a big deal about that, I guarantee you. Now, we already know that, of course, likely Diddy made her do it, but that's not the point, you see, because it's not what you think or even what you know. It's what you can prove. So this is something that they often do, but I don't think this is going to work in Cassie's case. They sometimes try to, or they usually try to cause the jury to dislike or mistrust the witness. Well, that's what the prosecution's going to definitely do when they pull out that video of Diddy pummeling Cassie in the hotel. Okay. And here's the thing. You see, Diddy is such a narcissist. He should never have come out and done that apology, because the only thing that apology was given was that he's trying to appeal to the public for sympathy. Now, that's really bad that he did that for him, because here's the thing. He could, had he not done that, not even spoken on it, he could have simply said that was AI. He could have said that wasn't him. I mean, he could have said a lot of things, but now we know for a fact it's him. I mean, even if it looks like him, he could have still denied it, is all I'm saying. But he's already owned up to it. So they're definitely not going to be able to make the jury dislike Cassie, in my opinion, because for one, Cassie looks sweet and innocent, like I told you all a month or so ago. She's pregnant. And she's walking in there, a pregnant woman. Then they're going to see the video of Diddy attacking her. Now, this is what's going to also be bad for Diddy if they bring any of this up. They could bring up past experiences where Diddy has been charged with violence. Okay, they could talk about how he's beat other women that he dated. Now, of course, the defense is going to try to keep any of that from being put on the record. If somebody mentions it, they'll probably ask the judge, they'll object. Okay, they'll say, Your Honor, objection, that's prejudicial. Or they'll move to strike. Can that be stricken from the record? And things like that. They're going to try to keep stuff like that out. Now, to make the jury believe that the cross-examining lawyer is closer to the facts than the opposing lawyer, of course, that's what they're going to try to do. So they're going to have to get up there and put on a show. Okay? They're going to try to put on a show. Now, seldom should a lawyer try to achieve all possible objectives in cross-examination. And by that, I mean, they don't need to try to get up there and debunk or dispute every little thing that Cassie says. Okay? They don't need to do that. And here's what I think they also shouldn't do, and I'm sure they won't. They should not try to attack Cassie, like going so hard in on her, because let's remember, she is a victim. They're going to try to prove that she isn't, of course. But for now, she's going to come in there as a victim, and she's pregnant. So do they really think it's going to be a good look for them to be hammering in on her? Maybe if they do, they'll let Tina Garrigus do it. Definitely Mark Agnafilo shouldn't be doing it, as far as I'm concerned. Okay, Nicole said another Ike and Tina. Yes, Diddy is the Ike of the hip-hop industry. Okay, please pay attention. So with that all being said, this is going to be a very interesting trial, I can assure you. And I believe it's possibly going to be the trial of the century. Okay. Now, with that all being said, let's go to some of these clips. Let me pull up the first one. Okay, let's go to this interview with Choppa. Like and share. Thank you in advance. Okay, Chopper reveals he saw Diddy take Cassie from Ryan Leslie and says Diddy and Cassie abuse went both ways. Says that the abuse went both ways. Now, Chopper, like I said, he's not the only one that said that, and it may not seem like a big deal, but here's what I'm telling you. Cassie didn't mention that in her lawsuit. She never said that she put hands on Diddy. She never said that she fought back. You know, it really shouldn't matter because no matter if she put hands on him or not, what he did in that hallway at that hotel was beyond nefarious, okay? And the other beatings that we've heard described. So there's no excuse for it. But the bottom line is they're going to bring this up to attack her credibility. So be like, okay, she left out convenient details. She didn't say anything about this. Well, Miss Ventura, why didn't you say this? Did you, in fact? These are the kind of things they're going to look for. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. Lights up, everyone, please like and share. And just remember, you heard it here first. Okay? Okay, I'm going to put an overlay over this. All right, here we go.
Yeah, that's real talk, man. But you had me thinking when you told me that Puffy told Fred that he'll take his life. When you hear rumors about Puffy being behind Pac death, do you believe it or you think it's a little far fetched?
No. I where I'm from, I can't really speak too heavy on. Should I keep it real? You want me to keep it real with you? That what you want?
Yeah. Keep it above.
Yeah, I do. Yeah, I do. I think Round is a menace. You know what I'm saying? But I don't think it's two types of menaces though. You got the niggas that talk about it, and then you got the people that talk about it and be about it. I just, looks are deceiving, brother. You dig? So I don't know if Diddy is about what he say about, but I've seen things. So I'm gonna say it's kind of like 50-50. But right now he on trial right now. So me speaking on that make him look bad. And that's what makes me feel like a duck, you hear me? But the real truth of it is, my Paul he say, how could you sit up here and do the interviews, Chop, and I feel like you taking up for a nigga that fucked over you. And I was like, I don't feel like I'm fucking no. I don't feel like I'm taking up for him. I just feel like at the end of the day, it's player of me to not bash a man 100%. But I will say this here. Do I feel like he's capable of the things that they said he did? Not 100%, but most of that shit. Most of that shit. Yeah, fucking right. Yeah, I do feel that way. You did. Look, if you could sit up here and do what you did to all your artists, can you imagine what the world haven't seen of things you've done? Come on, it ain't rocket science. Yeah, fucking right. It ain't rocket science, bruh. If you're capable of fucking these people lives up, imagine what you've been doing. So I believe that. And the crazy part about it, one time I seen Cassie in Vegas. This is all facts too. I seen at Floyd Mayweather Club, and I just came up in there randomly. I came up in there I was living in Vegas, so I seen that she was so happy to see me. She was like, "Chop," because you gotta understand, man. Cassie, she like a year or two older than me, but we come from the same era of being around each other. You dig? So I seen Cassie before Diddy was that was Diddy lady. That was actually Ryan Leslie girl, and Ryan Leslie is the one that did "I See You, Little Daddy" for me, featuring Lil Wayne and everything. We shot the video and all, but Ryan Leslie produced that for me. So I seen Cassie with Ryan Leslie. Diddy use his power structure, took Cassie from Ryan Leslie. Literally. Yeah. But anyway, I seen her in Vegas. This before years after. Oh no, years before that situation happened. Probably a couple years, probably like 2. But I seen her in there with an old man, you did.
Hold on, I just paused for a second because Pyle Bunyan said, how did Cassie and her husband meet? Cassie's husband, Alex Fine, was Diddy and Cassie's trainer. That's how Cassie met him. He was initially Diddy and Cassie's trainer, beloved.
And she was so happy to see me. She had buku bottles at the table. It was just her and the old man. And she was like, Chopper. And I'm like, oh, because it's like we went to school together practically. The Diddy camp, did it, bad boy college. She was so happy to see me, and we took shots together, and she told me, I swear she told me, she said, I never did nothing wrong to him. She said, I did everything right. I was just trying to pursue my career. You know that, huh, Chop? And I looked at it kind of awkwardly at first. It's because I was a little lost on why she even telling me this in a club full of women and we enjoying ourselves. But she said that to me. She said, I've never done nothing wrong. I just try to pursue my career. And a couple years later, she sued him. Yeah. So that lets you know, like, this was brawling up. This was bound to happen. It was bound to happen. You know what I'm saying? She said that, and then she was just like, I went through a lot. We sat down though. We took a shot, and then she started talking a little more. But her dude, the white dude, who was coolest of, I love white people. He was coolest of, and he was just like, he was trying to be like real, like trying to get her to like not say too much to me. You did, even though he looked at me like I was the coolest guy in the world, but he was just trying to get her not to speak so much. But she was so happy to see me, and to me, it felt like she just wanted to talk to somebody that understood it. And she's just like, he tried to blow up Kid Cudi car and all types. He told me he's gonna blow up Kid Cudi car, and he did all this and that to me. And I was just like, yeah, that's crazy. And I'm nonchalant, you dig? Like where I'm from, we used to trauma, so we look at things, even the trauma is hilarious. But she didn't find it funny. And that's the moment I didn't find it funny. She was just like, I tried to leave and he told me he was gonna blow up Kid Cudi car and all this. And she was like, I'm just letting you know at the end of the day, I feel you, I get it, I understand. And she was like, I just want to tell you I love you. Gave me a hug, shook dude's hand, and they left. Oh, she was like, oh yeah, keep the bottles, keep the party going. And they left. And after that, I sat down by myself. I was drinking her drink, drinking her bottles. I ain't even had to buy no bottles that night. I was drinking her bottles, and I don't know, that plagued my mind for probably about, I'd say about like 20 minutes. And after that, I ain't see her since. And that's when it happened. Probably about a year later. Facts. Facts. That shit crazy. Yeah, it was just crazy to me how it all just brailed up. Yeah, it's me. He should have just paid that lady ahead of time. I don't think the Me Too movement would have transpired or spiraled as fast and steep as it did if he just would have paid her what she really deserved. Because I'm not going to sit up here and say that Cassie was an angel in the situation, because Cassie cut up too. Cassie was being, she was doing what cute, crazy girls do too. So let's not discredit situations and relationships. You can't make it seem like somebody is just a villain walking around just batting people and beating people up. I don't think it went like that, from what I've witnessed. I think that but yet and still, no man should be putting their hands on a woman when you can just walk away. But I think Diddy felt like, as being an egotistical control freak, he felt like Cassie belonged to him. And you ain't going nowhere because I said so. Just like in other relationships in life, that's how some men feel about women that they deal with, the toxic relationships. So I think that's kind of what it was. And it's not no Cassie was kidnapped or none of that there. It's just Cassie had her moments, Diddy had his moments, The moment you get used to something, you get tired of it. So I think Cassie got tired of it.
Now, here is something that the defense is likely going to bring up about that right there. They're going to probably say, if Cassie was so afraid of Diddy, why would she punch him? Because Roger Bonds, I believe it is, says that she punched Diddy. Okay? And Chopper said that they both went both ways. So they're likely going to bring that up also. And then they'll also likely bring up the argument of, when people are on abusing substances, that makes for a very volatile and toxic relationship. People high off of illegal substances, off of drugs and alcohol. So they're going to throw that in. Okay. But anyway, now let's go to what Roger Bond had to say. Likes up, everyone, please like and share. Thank you in advance. Okay, I'm going to share the screen.
Based on our conversations where you said, look, you were in the car and Cassie punched Diddy in the face.
Right.
I said, look, I'm not sure. It seems to me like there was abuse both ways based on our conversations. And I've had abusive women in my life.
Right.
I've had women put their hands on me and I would stop them and I would grab them.
Exactly.
What I'm saying? I never struck a woman in my life, but I stopped women from grabbing me.
Right.
From punching me or slapping me. I would stop them.
As you should.
As I should. But I never struck a woman.
Right.
So I'm thinking, well, me being in certain situations like this, who knows what really happened? Maybe she's just a crazy, aggressive, violent woman. And he's just stopping her. But when I saw this video, I said, okay, that's all out the window.
And that's the way people took it. People took it that way. People say, oh, you contradicting yourself, Bonds. You said that. No, in reality, I did see her hit him back. But like I just said, my wife, my girlfriend, I've been hit plenty of times also.
Yeah.
Now that's that makes the decision between a man and a coward there. Because when they hit you, they're not hitting you with the force and the power that you have. He didn't hit her back and granted, you know what I'm saying? When I was a younger guy, 17, 18 and got hit, you might hit back. But after that first initial hit, you snap back and say, oh my God, I just hit my girl. You know what I'm saying? Even if she did hit you, but at the age of 40 something and everything that you've been through, for you not to be able to hold, this is your girl, this is your wife, this is your whoever. So for you to repeatedly do it is something that you're accustomed to. It's something that you enjoy. It's something that you like.
Yeah. I mean, watching that video, regardless of what happened before, she was leaving. He was in no danger.
Right.
On any level, he pursued her.
Right.
And viciously attacked her.
Right.
Regardless of what happened.
Which is the same thing if somebody break into your house. If they break into your house and they're leaving and you shoot them, you're going to get locked up because that person was leaving.
Yes.
So if you look at the situation of this girl leaving and what happened to her.
Yeah.
He deserved whatever comes to him for that. And this was 2016. They broke up in 2018.
Right. How do you think this video got released?
How do I think it got?
Yeah, I mean, has there been other situations? Because you talked about the situation back in New York where he smacked that guy for talking to Cassie, and then allegedly he got the footage from the club.
Right.
Was this happening multiple times? Would he be obtaining footage of situations that he would try to cover up?
Yes, of course. That's his first thing. It's been times where people got beat up in front of the studio, and he's going to get that footage from the studio building. He got a studio in there, but he doesn't own the building.
Yeah.
So in order to get that footage, you got to have connections with the owner of the building. Anything that happens that's wrong, you're going to reach out there and try to get that footage. So when they said that he got the footage, I believe in the lawsuit, she said, but what he didn't know was that somebody from the hotel gave her a copy.
You know that for a fact?
I don't know it for a fact. I thought she mentioned that in small writing in there.
Okay,
but
I'm not sure about that.
We could be sure about that. But she mentioned a lot of stuff. It was another young lady named because when this happened and she put my name into it, I tried to reach out to her like, okay, you could at least let me know you was going to use my name or something like that. So she has a friend named Kerry Morgan. And I reached out to Kerry, like, yo, tell Cassie to get at me. And even Kerry hit me back and said, Barnes, I haven't spoken to Cassie since 2018. And I said, you haven't spoken to Cassie since 2018? She said, no, not ever since Diddy went upside my head with a hanger and gave me a concussion. And I said, Diddy did what? She said, yeah, in 2018, he threw a wooden hanger at me and Cassie didn't have my back. And I haven't spoken to her since then. So when I read the lawsuit, I seen in there where she said that he had put hands on one of her friends, and then I think he paid her $50,000. And I put two and two together and said, okay, this is Kerry, because Kerry said she didn't say nothing. And I was wondering why she never said nothing, but then I seen in it that she gave him the $50,000. In the same way, Jordan couldn't say nothing about him beating her up and throwing her out the house and her falling on her ass and elbows, is the NDA situation where they can't mention it publicly or anybody, but somebody else can.
Here's the thing. They may have thought they couldn't mention anything that Diddy did violent to them. The lady he's talking about that fell out of the door and landed on her butt and elbows, I do believe that was the chef. Okay, one of his former chefs. But at the end of the day, yes, he said a hanger panther strike, but it was a wooden hanger. And some of those are very thick and heavy. She said she had a concussion. And then if you throw it, it depends on the velocity of which it's traveling. So yeah, she said she actually had a concussion from that. But the thing is, hold on, how hard did he throw? Yeah, he had to have thrown it pretty hard. Truth Brown had to have thrown it pretty hard. Okay. But now this person, Carrie Morgan. Okay, so this was Cassie's friend that Diddy threw this hanger at or whatever, and she never went to the police because Diddy supposedly paid her off. That is in the lawsuit. So Roger just corroborated that. That's in the lawsuit on page 23. Okay, we'll go over that momentarily, but let's keep listening. I had something else to tell you all, but I lost my train of thought because I mentioned something else.
So that's what he's been hiding behind this whole time.
Oh, well, yeah. Biggie's mom actually did an interview with Rolling Stone, and she said after seeing the video, she wants to smack the daylights out of Diddy when she sees him.
Because she loves Diddy.
Yeah,
she loves him like a son. I've seen that relationship throughout the years also.
But she said she was sickened when she saw that.
Of course, anybody would be sickened. I get calls now from women that's dealing with DV, and not only was that footage sickening, that footage is sending so many women around the world back to their counselors because they reliving the same thing again, seeing that footage.
All right. So now you heard Vlad say that Roger told him that Cassie punched Diddy in the face. There was another story about Diddy sitting in the front seat of a car and Cassie in the back, and she hit him in the face or something like that. I don't know if that's the same instance, but that's something that was said. So they're definitely going to bring that up because they're going to try to justify his actions and act like, well, they were both on drugs. And when you're high off drugs or whatever, you have substance abuse issues, you never know what people are going to do, this, that, and the third. Okay, and Diddy did say that he was in a dark place. They're going to bring all of that up. Now, let's go to the part of the lawsuit where the friend that got hit with the hanger. And that, I believe, is on page 23. Okay, let me see here. I'm starting at the bottom of page 22. Okay. So upon information and belief, Mr. Combs paid the Intercontinental Century City $50,000 for the hallway security footage from that evening. Now, after this, Miss Ventura left her home in Comstock and went to hide away in a friend's home in Florida. James Cruz, president of Bad Boy Management, tracked Miss Ventura down and told her that her single would not be released if she didn't answer Mr. Combs' phone calls. See how Diddy got down? Holding stuff over people's heads. Now, a woman who worked at Sony Music reached out to her with a similar ultimatum concerning her record. Incredibly, Mr. Combs even convinced one of his attorneys to call Ms. Ventura at this time. Now, this lawyer told Ms. Ventura that it's in your best interest to call Mr. Combs back. So each time Ms. Ventura tried to run away, Mr. Combs and his powerful network would force her to come back. They're going to find inconsistencies in that because there was an incident where Roger Bond said Diddy beat the crap out of Cassie, and then days later she popped up. So like nobody went and got her, she just popped up. Okay, and then the time that she supposedly came to check on him after Kim Porter's demise. I'm just telling you, these are little tidbits of information there that the defense is going to hone into to say that, well, you know, she left out these details. Okay, and this can chip away at the credibility of some things that she may say. Okay, so now let's look at this. Okay, so says Mr. Combs' tight hold over her life had irreparably damaged her friendships. Around 2018, when Miss Ventura was with her friend Carrie Morgan in her house, now this is the woman that Roger was just talking about with the hanger. Mr. Combs used his key to Miss Ventura's house and came in unannounced. He and Miss Morgan had an altercation during which Mr. Combs threw a hanger at Miss Morgan. Upon information and belief, the incident resulted in a settlement between Mr. Combs and Miss Morgan, and Miss Ventura ended up paying Miss Morgan additional funds in an attempt to resolve the dispute between her close friend and her abusive and controlling boyfriend. The relationship between Miss Ventura and Miss Morgan has been strained since. Seeing the extreme measures that Mr. Combs took to keep a tight hold on Miss Ventura and isolate her from her support network, and having experienced the repercussions of rejecting his demands, Miss Ventura felt that saying no to Mr. Combs could cost her or would cost her something: her family, her friends, her career, or even her life. Now, my question is the jury going to believe that she was in fear of her life? Because if they're going to point out that if he's beating you like this and doing all of this stuff, that's already putting your life in danger. So, but you still stayed. And then there were times, and I want you all to pay attention, because don't shoot the messenger. I'm just pointing out the obvious things that the defense is going to zoom in on. Now, there were times, supposedly, allegedly, where Cassie went out of town, out of the country, went traveling with her friends. They're going to say you had to come back, or you had to go back to him, or there was no way for you to escape, to get out of it. I'm just saying. And let's keep in mind that we don't have all of the facts of what the defense knows and what they're going to say and what evidence they're going to present, any of that. Nor will we until the trial actually starts. Okay, so now let's go to this other video, because I believe in here Roger Bond's corroborating some of the other things that Cassie said. Okay, I'm going to share my screen. Here we go.
A big argument, or okay, now with Cassie, do you remember like the first time you seen them have like a big argument, or like them having like a fight or anything like that?
I don't really remember. You know, they always argued and went back and forth with it. But the first time that I actually seen them put hands on her was that time that she's talking about that I got in between. And that was in 2009.
Can you take me through that?
That was just basically her talking, if I'm not mistaken. She was talking to Benny, I forgot his last name. He used to manage Will Smith. He managed Jennifer Lopez. And he might have managed Puff at one time.
For those of you that don't know, he's talking about Benny Medina, okay? Because that was J Lo's and Will Smith's manager back then.
Or never. But it was at a party and she was talking to him and Puff just lost it. Like, what the fuck is you talking to? Or it might have been Johnny from Danny D. Kane. I think it was Johnny from Danny D. Kane that was managing Danny D. Kane. And he just lost it. Like, what are you talking to him for? What the fuck? And that's when he just grabbed her and he punched her and he threw her on the floor and I got in between it. Like, yo, what the fuck are you doing? You know, we right outside this party. It's 1 million people out here. Like, what the fuck is going on? And, you know, I had to get in between him and grab him. He was mad at me, but it was what it was. Not on my time, not on my watch.
Well, and then they get in the car and they start fighting even more?
Yeah, they started arguing and fighting in the car. She punched him in the face. You know what I'm saying? And he started trying to hit her, but when he was trying to hit her, the window came down. And people were in the car next to us and they said, oh shit, that's Diddy. So I'm trying to drive, I'm trying to keep him in the front, and I'm trying to roll up the window at the same time. You know what I'm saying? And I was able to diffuse that situation. And then we went back to Beverly Hills to where we were staying at.
Now this situation happens, and this is probably, I mean, this is a pretty big situation, man. He even hit her in public. You know, how are you feeling after you see this?
Well, at that particular time, my adrenaline was going, man. I just say, yo, y'all fucked up. You know, at that particular time, I say, yo, y'all are fucked up. You know what I'm saying? It wasn't until I got back into my room that night where I just was like, yo, that was fucking crazy, yo. Like, that was bananas, yo. Yo, this thing is crazy.
Hold on, you all. Shout out to Corey Love TV. You all make sure you follow him. Corey, drop your link in the chat, beloved. And no, that is not Waka Flocka's mother. That's Roger Bonds, Diddy's former bodyguard. Okay, but I can see why you would say that. Deb does have a very deep voice for a woman.
Like, that's all I kept saying to myself. Was like, yo, this thing is crazy. And then I was glad that I was there. Because I don't know if somebody else would have stepped up. I don't know if somebody else would have grabbed him. I don't know if somebody else would have got in between. I don't know if she would have hit her head on the sidewalk. I was just thankful I was there. And when I seen him the next morning, I just was like, yo, that was crazy last night. And, you know, he kind of looked at me. When things like that happen, Puff is the type that won't look you straight in your face for a couple of days because he knows what he did was wrong. But I kind of got over it once they got cool back again. You know what I'm saying? And I kind of pushed it to a, yo, that shit happens in a relationship type thing. You know what I'm saying? Until I noticed that it was a pattern.
Were you the only one that actually had the balls to kind of stand up to Diddy and tell him anything?
No, I'm not going to say that. I'm not going to say that. But I will say I was basically the only one that would do it in front of people. You know what I'm saying? But I wouldn't say I was the only one.
Okay. Well, I guess he sends her to a hotel and she has to stay at a hotel for days while she heals up?
Yeah.
Or is that from a different situation?
Well, that's the same situation, but I didn't know that they had continued to get into it once they got back. And he called me over the loudspeaker and he said, yo, take Cassie to the hotel. We already called and got her a room or whatever. And I took her over to the hotel and then I would just check on her, you know, ask if she needed something, see if she wanted some smoke or something like that. And then that's when she unbuttoned her shirt and she showed me her chest. And she had 2 black and blue marks on her chest. And I was like, damn, you all right? She was like, I'm all right. She stayed there for a week. And then I didn't see her for about 2 weeks. And then one day she just popped back up at the house. And it was like nothing never happened.
Now, I want you all to pay attention to what he just said. One day, she just popped back up at the house like nothing ever happened. The defense is going to zone in on that because Cassie said that every time she tried to leave, his network of people would come and drag her back. Sometimes she went back voluntarily from the sounds of it. Okay, from what Roger is saying and from other things that have been said. So they're going to bring all of that up to prove inconsistencies in her story.
Damn. Okay, so you guys go back to work, things start moving. Does Diddy, try to do anything to repair the situation after that, or is it just back to normal?
Well, whenever a situation happened like that, Cassie would go shopping. You know what I'm saying? And come back with 1 million bags.
They're also going to zone in on that because Cassie has in her lawsuits how Diddy was spending all this money and buying her all these gifts and sending her on trips and all that. They're going to try to paint her as a gold digger, an opportunist, someone who stayed in a relationship that she knew was toxic from both parties, engaging in mutual combat, from both parties being toxic with each other and being addicted to substances and alcohol. And they're going to say, they're going to try to paint it to the jury as though she did this because she loved the lifestyle she was living, that she was participating in these things because she wanted to, and that these freak off videos that they're likely going to show, the all 9 of them, they're going to say this was all consensual. Okay, so please pay attention.
I guess that was his way of apologizing to her. You start to learn and know what a person likes and what position or situation you have them in. You know what I'm saying? By being able to do this. And she would just go shopping, or she might go on a trip with her girlfriend somewhere like Fiji or someplace like that,
Now you heard that, right? She would go somewhere like Fiji with her girlfriends. So you're that far away from him. And when you got back in the US, you couldn't go somewhere to get away from him. You couldn't just disappear, go somewhere, have your family set you up somewhere. They're going to bring up all this stuff. Okay. I want you to pay attention. And also they're definitely going to ask her about Ryan Leslie because she was Ryan Leslie's girlfriend. And Ryan Leslie was working with Diddy, introduced her to Diddy. And then she ended up with Diddy. They're going to say, did you pursue him or come after him because he had money? You left the person you were with because you thought this would advance your career. Maybe you were willing to do anything to have a career. You knew that he had other women. You knew that he was with Kim Porter. They're going to bring up all this stuff. They're going to try to make her look real bad. Please pay attention.
What do you think was the biggest gift that Diddy ever gave her?
I would say a $100,000 apartment in Manhattan.
$100,000 a month?
I don't know how much this apartment cost a month. I know it was in a new building, and it was a very expensive apartment. I think that was the biggest gift that I've seen her give her.
Okay. Was this after a fight or anything, or just because?
I would say just because you put up with my bullshit all these years.
What's up? This is Cam Capone. We got more content like this coming soon.
All right. With that all being said, shout out to Cam Capone in the Art of the Dialogue. Now, okay, so someone just asked the question. Hold on. The Hood Reeler says, Queen, I wonder how they're going to paint her as a gold digger when his main control system is money and fame, not to mention being blackballed or blackmailed for not listening. Well, that's all speculation. That's all speculation that she was blackballed. Now they'll say he had the ability to blackball her. Absolutely. But at the end of the day, Diddy's a whole billionaire. What do you mean? How are they going to do it? Like I just said, she was initially with Ryan Leslie. That was her man. Why did she leave him and go to Diddy in the first place? That's how they can do it. Okay? Because Diddy had more money, more power, and all of that than Ryan Leslie. She didn't even have to ever be with Diddy. She could have just stayed with Ryan Leslie if she was just worried about a career. right? If she just wanted to be in the music industry, because he was already helping her with that. He's the one who initiated her introduction to Diddy. So they can raise the question as to why did you leave this man who was helping you with your career to be with Diddy? Because you saw that he had money, because you saw that he had power. You knew he had other women. You knew that he was with the mother of his children, Kim Porter. I'm telling you, just wait till the trial starts, honey. Okay? You'll see how it all goes down. All right. So with that all being said, now let's go back to the lawsuit docs to corroborate what Mr. Bonds just said. I'm going to share the screen. Okay, he said the incident happened in 2009, and here we are. Okay, so here's what it says. In January of 2009, after Mr. Combs learned that Miss Ventura spoke to another music manager, and that's when he was talking about that it was probably Benny Medina or whatever, Roger Bonds, that is. So found out she spoke to another music manager at a party in Los Angeles. He became enraged. So Roger Bonds just corroborated Cassie's story, what she has in the lawsuit. She had hoped speaking to this manager would allow her to further grow her career and that Mr. Combs would be happy for her. But instead, he became extremely angry and pulled her out of the club where the party was taking place. Now, in the car leaving the club, Mr. Combs beat Miss Ventura, pushing her into a corner of the vehicle and stomping on her face. Mr. Combs' security staff, Roger Bonds, tried to stop the beating, but was unable to de-escalate the situation. Now, when the car arrived at Mr. Combs' residence, Miss Ventura attempted to run away, but Mr. Combs followed her and proceeded to again kick her in the face. Miss Ventura was bleeding profusely and was ushered into Mr. Combs' home, where she began to throw up from the violent assault. Upon recognizing the damage he had done and the physical evidence of his abuse, Mr. Combs panicked and forced his staff to bring Miss Ventura to a hotel suite at the London Hotel in Los Angeles, where she was required to stay for a week. During this stay, as her injuries from the beating healed, Miss Ventura began to fully realize that Mr. Combs' tremendously loyal network not only knew about and witnessed his assault, but also that the witnesses were not willing to do anything meaningful to stop Mr. Combs' behavior. She recognized that she was powerless and that reporting Mr. Combs to authorities would not alter Mr. Combs' status or influence, but would merely give Mr. Combs another excuse to hurt her. Honey, if I ever got away from him to go to Fiji or anywhere else out of the country, I wouldn't have come back. Okay. And if I would have come back to the States, but he wouldn't have been able to find me. I promise you that. Now, while in the hotel, she asked to go home to her parents, but Mr. Combs wouldn't let her leave. She lied to her mother when asked about an online gossip forum that reported the assault. And I went and did some digging, and I found the online forum, and I found that post from 2009. And here's what it says. January 2009. Last night, Diddy and Cassie were at a club in Los Angeles. Cassie apparently was chopping it up with some producer for a bit too long for Diddy's taste. Diddy goes over to her, grabs her arm, and starts going off on her in front of the dude. At this point, they proceed to leave the club. They get into the limo, and Cassie is mouthing off and bops Diddy upside the back of the head. Now, you're scared of this man, but you literally hit him in front of people because witnesses saw her do this, apparently. Okay? And this is exactly what Roger Bonds said, verbatim almost. So, and this is from 2009 when it actually happened. Okay, so anyway, says she was mouthing off and bopped him upside the head. Now, this is 3 different scenarios where people have said that she put hands on him, and the defense is going to use it all. Okay. She hit him upside the head, and of course, all hell breaks loose. Diddy smacks her in the face and is shaking her an ish. Okay. His bodyguard tries to intervene, telling Diddy to chill. They continue arguing all the way back to the house in the limo. Once they get there, Cassie runs and grabs her ish like she's leaving and goes walking off down the street. Diddy goes after her and proceeds to knock her to the ground, at which point he kicks her a few times in the face. The bodyguard then pulls him off of her. Cassie is crying and bleeding and is then taken to her hotel by one of the assistants. The next day, one of his assistants says that he took her on a $20,000 shopping spree for gifts and then had them sent to Cassie's room. Okay? So these things are corroborated, all right? So I absolutely believe them. So now let's continue. So Ms. Ventura was terrified, isolated, and unable to see a pathway out of Mr. Combs' abusive hold on her life. She found herself becoming numb to the abuse that she was experiencing and becoming entirely emboldened to Mr. Combs' demands. She began to blindly follow his instructions out of fear of again being on the receiving end of a vicious beating. Mr. Combs, by Mr. Combs' own admission, his relationship with Ms. Ventura was like Bobby and Whitney, a clear acknowledgement of the unequal power dynamic and excessive domestic violence that permeated their relationship. From the outside looking in, Ms. Ventura had heard others refer to her relationship with Mr. Combs as akin to Ike and Tina. Now, when Diddy said that their relationship was like Bobby and Whitney, let's not forget that Bobby and Whitney also used to both put hands on each other, okay? Because Whitney would fight back. And Tina Turner finally fought back. I don't think she fought back much at the time. But anyway, so please pay attention. Now, with that all being said, I'm just telling you that they're going to use these things to absolutely attack her credibility. Okay, so now let's go to what the legal analyst had to say about all of this. The Hood Realer says that Cassie turned into Tina Turner in the limousine scene and started fighting back. Well, you know, they said Cassie was always fighting back. Corey says, great coverage, Queen. I've been out the Diddy loop, so thank you for the consistency. Well, thank you, beloved. I appreciate you. I really appreciate you. Peace, love, and blessings. And don't forget to drop your link in the chat. And you all follow Corey Love. He has some very interesting topics that he discusses, a lot of good information. Now, we're going to go to what this legal expert had to say, and he gave his thoughts on it. And I thought he had. Okay, now this guy was on Stephen A. Smith's podcast. I'm going to share my screen. I'm going to put an overlay up here. Another thing that Roger Bond talked about in one of his interviews was the bruising on Cassie's face, where she had the busted lip and the knot upside her head. There's the proof of that right there. Other images that can be found online when Cassie was with Diddy with bruises. There's another. All so nefarious. Poor Cassie, the fact that she endured all of that, you know, at the end of the day, my grandmother used to say this, and now I see why she used to say it. My grandmother used to always tell us that when you're a kept woman, you pay for every dime that you're given. Okay? You pay for it. Let's put that up there. Okay, there we go. All right, now let me go to the timestamp.
As they may be in significance. But my next guest, that's not a problem he has. Joining me to discuss this is ESPN and ABC News legal analyst, one of the best in the business, I might add. He's also a Sports Center anchor as well, the one and only Ryan Smith, my colleague. What's going on, buddy? How you doing, man? How's everything?
Everything's good, man. How you doing?
I'm doing all right, man. Let's get right to it.
Hold on for just a second. Okay, Panther Strike says, Queen, how long were they together? They were together for 10 years, beloved. Cassie and Diddy were together for 10 years. They broke up in 2018.
You heard me talking about Diddy a little bit earlier. His trial date starts on May 5th. What's the significance of Cassandra Cassie Ventura testifying under her real name instead of anonymously like 3 other people named in the indictment?
Yeah, this could be huge in a couple different ways. And let's break it down between symbolically and legally. symbolically for me, this is huge because it lends credibility to her testimony. So you think about it like this. Cassie gets up on the stand, she's naming herself, and for jurors, and even in the court of public opinion, there's this sense that she's standing behind her allegations full throttle, using her name. Now, that's nothing against other accusers who might not be willing to use their names. It's just that how we tend to look at things, especially how juries might tend to look at things. They might say, well, this person's standing behind what they're saying, so we're going to back her a little bit more. We might believe her a little bit more, and it lends credibility to her allegations. The other thing is putting her name out there, and I know it's been out there in some connections in many ways so far, it also helps others possibly come forward. Prosecutors always talked about how this case might not be done. There might be other factors, and that could still be a possibility. Legally, I think it's twofold. Number one, it's showing of strength for the prosecution. We are here. We are naming ourselves. We are out there. Come at us. The other thing I think that's critical here is it puts the defense on the defensive. Here's why. She gets up on the stand. She names herself. She's got this credibility. Jurors are connecting with her. It might make it harder for them to try to discredit her or intimidate her or come at her really hard on cross-examination. So those are some factors that play into all this. And I think for the prosecution, it's a win to have her naming herself.
Let's look at the specificity of the actual charges against Diddy. When you talk about her name, instead of being anonymous, her name being put out there, specifically, what can she speak to? I'm talking about the actual specifications of the charges against him. How can she specifically speak against that? We heard the words racketeering, for crying out loud. What would she have to do with that? Explain that to my viewers.
My biggest thing is she's going to try to explain what happened at these freak-offs, and that's going to be huge. I think people tend to look at legal trials and they say, well, this person's going to give us the smoking gun. This person's going to tell us the one thing that's connect everything. But racketeering cases are a vast thing that you have to build. So you have to show through the different witnesses, through the different evidence, all the different things you have, that there was a criminal enterprise going on in furtherance of these activities, in furtherance in this case of these assaults, of these different things in terms of prostitution, the allegations they're making. So you have to build that case. And I think what Cassie can do is, we've all seen the video and there's been a lot of connections to her in that video, but this goes beyond that. This is her being able to frame what the situation was like for Diddy, what some of these events were like, so they can use her testimony along with the evidence they have to prove the racketeering.
But Ryan, when we talk about that, and I just playing devil's advocate for a second, Diddy, in all likelihood, one would surmise, would say she was consensual in these actions, okay? She wasn't forced, etc. His proof could be the fact that they were in a relationship for years. So if he was so reprehensible, such an insidious figure, why was she involved with him for so long? What defense do you anticipate he'll be able to make, that he has a snowball's chance, and you know what, of making against her, particularly when she's the one we saw him hit and kick on a video?
That's the defense. He's going to say she was consensual. He's going to say all the people involved, everybody the prosecution is bringing in was all consensual, that people did this because they liked it. They wanted to be there. But prosecutors, you got to look at it in terms of the way prosecutors are trying to build their case. They're building it in the same way or in a similar way that the Weinstein case was built. This is a person in power, a gatekeeper to certain things in this industry.
Now, let me stop right there, because didn't I tell you all the other day, you heard it here first, that they're going to try to build this just like the Weinstein case, and they're also going to try to get that appeal if Diddy does get found guilty. They're going to try to get the case overturned, just like in the case of Weinstein. That's why the prosecution needs to be very careful that they don't make the same mistake that the prosecutors made in the Weinstein case, okay? Because guess what? If Diddy's case gets overturned like Weinstein's, he could absolutely get off, okay? Because it's up to the judge to decide whether or not, or the prosecutors to decide whether or not they're going to try the case again or whatever. Or sometimes they just let it go. So they have to be very careful with that.
If you wanted to get into this industry in certain ways, you had to do the things he said. And this was how he did it. And these are the things these people had to do. I think you make a great point that they were in a relationship, that might be part of what they might use. But my sense is that, and we don't know all of the prosecution's case, my sense is that they're going to build this and say, she was in that relationship, but just because you're in a relationship doesn't mean that person gets to control you and make you do certain things. And perhaps there was a point where he was doing this and doing things that she felt like she had to do in order to not only further her career, but in order to be a part of this world. And I think that's one way in which prosecutors are going to try to build this case. They're going to try to build similarities among Cassie and other people that might testify and other people that are contributing to this case to say, this was a pattern. These were the things he did in order to continue this criminal enterprise.
Now, let me tell you all something. What this legal analyst is talking about right here, I want you to pay attention, because he's talking about other people that may testify in the case that can establish a pattern. Let me tell you right now, that's what the prosecution does not want to do. At least they should not want to do it, because who are the other people? Now, are they talking about victims 2, 3, and 4? We don't know who those victims are. We don't know their names. We don't know what they're going to say. Maybe he's talking about them, but it definitely should not be any of the people that filed the civil lawsuits against against Diddy, because those civil cases have nothing to do with the criminal trial. And if those are brought in, and I'm going to repeat this for those of you who came in late, because here's the thing. If they allow people who have civil cases against Diddy to come and testify to try to establish a pattern of abuse or assault or whatever, or people being given illegal substances or whatnot, if they don't have anything to do with the case, the criminal case, and they're not on the indictment or whatever, that can backfire. Okay, because again, that is prior bad acts. And that's exactly why Harvey Weinstein's case got overturned, because the prosecutor allowed women to come in who had accusations against Harvey Weinstein and civil cases, but not criminal. And they came in so they could establish a pattern of his abuse. Okay, and they testified. And then his attorneys were able to come back and say, wait a minute. They should not have been able to say anything because that was prejudicial. Them coming in when they had nothing to do with this case, and they want to bring up prior bad acts, that's prejudicial to the jury. He didn't get a fair trial, and now we want another one. We want the trial, we want the conviction overturned. Because just because someone did something bad before doesn't make them guilty in this case. Now, it can establish a pattern, true, but just because they did something before, like you stole something from a store you shoplifted 20 years ago, and now something comes up missing and you're one of the people present, that doesn't mean that you're the thief. Okay? So that is how they were able to get Harvey Weinstein, his case overturned. And if the prosecution does that in Diddy's case, the same thing is going to happen. Okay, 9 times out of 10. And I told you all that his defense team has continuously brought up the Weinstein case. Okay, they've used it as a point of reference and different things, and they have almost verbatim the same arguments and motions being filed. Okay, because I've looked at both of the cases. All right, so with that all being said, they need to be real careful with that. And another thing too, I see Corey Love TV said Cassie being pregnant could work against the defense. Absolutely. It definitely will, because that's what I told you all. I told you all that before. Cassie walking in there and she's already showing, and she's walking in there pregnant, looking all sweet and innocent. Of course, they're going to be empathetic to her. Okay. Mothers, pregnant women look nurturing and all of that. They look innocent, and that is going to play for the prosecution. That's going to play for them, but against the defense. And that's also why when the defense is cross-examining Cassie, they should not go too hard on her. And by that, I mean, ask her the tough questions, try to destroy her credibility, but do it in a way so that it does not look as though they're badgering the witness. What the prosecution is going to have to be careful of is they're going to have to hope that Cassie is really ready to get up there and tell her story. Okay? Because here's the thing. The prosecution doesn't want the defense to object and say leading the witness. You see, sometimes prosecutors will lead the witness if the witness isn't saying what they want them to say. Okay? They'll start asking the question in such a way as to give them a clue of how to respond. Okay, that's leading the witness. the defense is going to object. Also, if the defense is going too hard on Cassie, the prosecution is going to object because they're going to say they're badgering the witness. Okay? And if someone gets up there to testify and they're acting reluctant or like they don't want to say certain things or don't want to answer, then that's a hostile witness. Now, some of those S workers may be hostile witnesses. And I've already heard from an inside source that one, I don't know how many, but I do know that at least one, well, allegedly, at least one of the S workers has already given information that corroborates the defense, not the prosecution. Okay. And that's something that I pointed out to you all weeks ago as well. I said, these S workers, are they going to get up there and say that it was not consensual? Because remember, when they had the freak offs, Cassie says that Diddy was making her have relations with these people while he sat there and watched and recorded. So if the S workers were doing something to her without her consent, isn't that great on them? So, and even if they don't get charged, even though they haven't been charged for it because they're testifying against Diddy, who's the big fish, at the end of the day, do they really want to get up there and admit that they did something like that? So what are these S workers going to say? And let's not forget also that Cassie admits that she was the one who hired these people. Of course, Diddy paid them, but she's the one who got online, made the phone calls, and got these people. Diddy told her what he was looking for, according to her. Ones with big black cucumbers. You all know what she said in the lawsuit. And so the defense is going to say, well, it sounds like you were a willing participant. You were out here picking your own rapist. You were out here picking your own S-assaulters. Okay? And they're also going to point out ways or things that they're going to ask her certain things that she could have done. You couldn't have done this to get away. Why did you come back? What about when she visited him after Kim Porter passed away? If he was such a disgusting, vile person, why would you want to come and see about him and see about his well-being? Now, someone mentioned in the chat, I believe it was Gwendolyn, said something about Stockholm Syndrome. Well, here's the thing. I don't know if Cassie necessarily had Stockholm Syndrome. I don't think she did, just for the simple fact that a person with Stockholm Syndrome, they continue to protect their abuser. Okay, that's what they do. They continue to protect the abuser, and they will not admit any wrongdoing on the person's side. So I don't think that and maybe they could after a time, but I don't think that Cassie had Stockholm Syndrome. Okay, I think that Cassie did just what they're saying that she did. The legal analyst literally just said, please pay attention, that the prosecution could make the argument that she felt compelled to stay there because she wanted her career and he was holding it over her head. Okay, but here's the thing. Who's going to put up with all of that for a music career if you also have to fear for your life? Who's going to do that? Who's going to risk it? Is your life more important for you to live, or is the music career more important? And if that were the case, she was with Diddy for a whole decade. They're going to say after that first album and that first song, Me and You, whatever it was, came out, and he kept telling her that he was going to put out another album. He signed her for a 10-album deal. After she realized that there was no more albums coming out, that she was not working in the studio, she should have known then the career is gone. So why did you stay? See, that's not going to fly. The defense is going to bring all of this up. Okay? Now, I just want you all to be prepared, because I know how we all want it to go. But at the end of the day, we have to also at the same time be realistic. The defense is going to come hard, and these are things that they're going to point out.
But if she's willing to put her name on Front Street instead of being anonymous, and others refrain from doing so, won't that diminish potentially their argument against Diddy, the anonymous ones?
I love that you answered that question, because that's a common thing that people ask when you talk about one person revealing their name and others not. And you make a great point, because in some ways it looks like, well, they're not willing to stand behind their claims. So how can we believe their claims? what the judge and what others are going to have to decide in this case, and what probably will play out a little bit, is the reason why people are trying to remain anonymous here. Cassie is a well-known public figure. She was also connected in that initial videotape. We know that she is a part of this, anybody who knows anything about this case. So in many ways, it's amazing that she's still coming forward and offering herself out there like this, with all the public scrutiny that she might face, with the harassment she might face. But Stephen A., look at it from the other people's perspective. Are they supposed to be in a place where they're supposed to deal with the harassment and the public scrutiny? I think it becomes hard for people sometimes to realize that people who are accusers in cases like this, they come forward with their story, and as painful as that is, there becomes the aftermath of sharing the story. They're harassed online. People get their address. They try to find them. The complaints the accusations dog them for most of their lives. How does that affect their ability to get a job? How does that affect their ability to live in society? So I think it's incredibly brave that Cassie's able to come forward and use her name, but she's also a public figure, and she's been accustomed to that scrutiny a little bit. I think what will help the other accusers is they might not be as famous, maybe not as accustomed, and maybe it'll be easier for the prosecution to say to jurors, hey, look, they don't have the public profile that she does. Let's try to hear their words and respect their privacy.
The word anonymous, and I'm going to go off the subject in a second, but the word anonymous, a lot of people don't realize what that means. It just says, okay, you don't know the meaning, the public. But those who will testify against Diddy anonymously, does Diddy and his defense team know specifically who they are? Do they know their names, etc.? Can you explain that to my audience?
Yeah, they'll know their names. Discovery should have all come out. A lot of that information should come out unless there's some sort of play by the prosecutor to try to restrict that access because there's some concern about harassment or that they can be threatened. But in theory, the way this should work is they should have a right to confront their accusers. They should have a right to know their names, background on them, and that's part of what they're going to try to use to discredit their story. So, but the naming anonymous ends up being significant in a case like this because you mentioned it. Once you put Cassie's name out on Front Street, everybody's going to hear about it. We're going to be waiting for the testimony. We're going to be trying to figure out what she said. She's going to probably have to do press conferences, possibly at some point speak. Are the other people signing up for that in order to share what happened to them?
This is Mr. Heeman Perry, walking away from the store that turned him away for...
And I think that's the critical part of leaving their names anonymous. In that courtroom, that stuff is supposed to be confidential and allows them to go ahead and live their lives while also sharing their truth as the prosecution needs them to build their case.
The video that Diddy put out on social media where he appeared contrite and disheveled, those are the words that I used, basically saying he was effed up. He was in a very, very bad place when he did what he did to Cassie Ventura. You see the video right there. How incriminating could that end up being against him now that Cassie has been willing to attach her name to the lawsuit, and she's going to come out on Front Street and say whatever it is that she has to say?
It could be a very big problem for him because prosecutors are going to pull up that videotape. They're going to put it out there in court and they're going to say, look at what this man said. He is sorry for what he did. Folks, let's outline for you now what he did. Cassie, let's get on the stand and outline for us what he did. And coupled with our evidence, that's going to prove our case. So typically, when you have a situation like that, your lawyers will tell you, if you're representing Diddy, hey, don't say anything. I know there's a temptation to do that. Don't say anything because it can be used against you. I think in Diddy's mind, it's a way to get public sympathy. It's a way to get, and I think in some ways his defense team can say about this, hey, he's apologizing for the relationship. He is not a perfect person, but he is not a criminal. That's going to be their messaging. But still, you don't want to have a videotape out there from your client saying, I'm sorry for what I did, giving the prosecution the ability to explore that. And with their evidence, with Cassie and with other witnesses, to be able to prove, yeah, you're sorry for what you did because it was criminal. That's what prosecutors are going to want to do.
Knowing the law, knowing criminal cases the way that you do, what does this case eerily remind you of as it pertains to other cases that may have existed out there in the past? When you think about what P. Diddy is going through right now, what's the comparison you draw it to?
My biggest comparison is the Weinstein case, also the R. Kelly case. Both of those cases involved a situation where prosecutors were able to build it as you have a gatekeeper and it's impossible to really make inroads in this area without the gatekeeper. Now, I know people are going to hear that and say, well, all of these people, they could have, Diddy is doing this, they could have gone to Dre or somebody else. and there's a million other rap artists and production companies out there. But I think what they're trying to build in the same way that it was built in the Weinstein case was he wasn't the only studio in town. Miramax wasn't the only place to make films. But in a particular way, once you got in this world, there was a way to build your career, to foster development. And I think what this case draws a similarity to, and what prosecutors have been trying to do with these cases, is show no one is above the law. You can't go out, in prosecutors' mind, create a business and then make people do your bidding, even if it's illegal, in order to move up in that business. If it's a legitimate business, you can't do that. And so in the same way that the Weinstein case was prosecuted and the R. Kelly case was prosecuted, it feels like prosecutors are following the similar playbook here, trying to make that point not only publicly, but also in the courtroom. These are criminal enterprises that in many ways were set up in furtherance of Diddy and the people with him, and at the expense of these, in their minds, accusers and victims.
We use words, last question on this matter. We use words like criminal enterprise. We use words like racketeering and what have you. Is it wrong for us to get the impression that it's not Diddy that they're after? They're after him, of course. Please don't get me wrong. But it's not just him. They're after a whole string of individuals that he's connected to, as opposed to it just being. It was about R. Kelly. It was about Harvey Weinstein. It doesn't appear to be thereafter just Diddy. It's like he's the guy to get, so all the dominoes will fall and we'll get everybody associated with it. That's the impression that I'm getting. To that you say what, Ryan Smith?
Yeah, I say I completely agree. And I say I would go beyond that. The first thing is, you're absolutely right. They're trying to get him and the enterprise and everything that backed him and everything that created this enterprise, because that's what they try to do when they prosecute criminal cases. I know that people out there say, hey, this is just about Diddy. It's not just about Diddy. It's about trying to uphold the law. That's how prosecutors see it. But the way I go beyond it is this. With each one of these cases, they are trying to send a message, not just to the Diddys of the world or to the Harvey Weinstein or R. Kellys. They're trying to send a message to the people who have other things going on, or people who might come up later, who might have ideas of doing something that they're saying Diddy did. They're saying, we will find you. We will come after you. The fact that Diddy is there in the courtroom, perhaps he is telling us things about you, about people you know. So if you're doing something on the wrong side of the law and you think your power and your money and influence is going to protect you, it will not. And that's the message they're trying to send. We obviously, Stephen A., we talk about this case. We have to see how it's litigated and how everything comes out. But for prosecutors, this is every success they have in this area is another ability for them to be able to say to everybody else out there in all of these businesses, you are not above the law, no matter how much money or power you have.
Okay, well, I'm calling cap on that. I have to disagree with him on that. Okay, I think it is all about Diddy. Okay, Diddy is the big fish in this case. You think they want people like Clive Davis or Lucian Grange? And I'm not saying that they did anything, but I think they may have. At the end of the day, I think Diddy learned it from them. That's just my opinion. But with that all being said, do you think they want those people? Who do you think they want besides Diddy? Who's bigger on the totem pole than Diddy? Anybody that's above Diddy, they're not looking for those people, because if they were, we would have had some more people arrested in the Epstein case. And what is he talking about? Did he even mention Epstein? I know he said Weinstein, but in the Epstein case, who were the people that were the clients? If Epstein was trafficking, who were the clients? Okay, that's the same question for Diddy. If Diddy was trafficking people, who were his clients? Those people have never been shown till this day in the case of Epstein. Okay, so he can miss me with that on that part. I have to respectfully disagree when he says that they're trying to see who else they can bring down like a domino effect. No, this is all about Diddy. And this became about Diddy the moment that Diddy went after Diageo, accusing them of racism, okay, and suing them. That's when all this started. I mean, do you all think it's a coincidence that Diddy sued Diageo in May of 2023? And then these allegations come out November of 2023. Now, I heard through the grapevine, and I can't substantiate this, that Clive Davis was the one who paid for or got Cassie that lawyer, Douglas Whitford. Okay? So just think about that. All right. This is all happening to Diddy, in my opinion, like I told you all from the very beginning, because Diddy got out of line. Okay. He got out of line at the end of the day. And when they talk about nobody's above the law, yeah, I don't believe that. There are some people in this country that are absolutely above the law. And one of them is the President of the United States. 34 times convicted felon, but you're running things. Okay. Please pay attention. Okay. So anyway, with that all being said, I hope you all enjoyed the broadcast. I'm going to conclude this. Oh, before I go, let's just go over, hold on real quick. Before I go, let's just go over a couple of pages in this lawsuit, because I have forgotten some of this stuff, and you all likely have too, because it's been over a year since we went through it. But I was just reading some of this, and I thought it was interesting when I went back to the part of how Diddy was supposedly conducting the freak-offs. Okay? And I do believe that the defense will likely question Cassie on some of the things that she said about the freak-offs to try to, not only discredit her, but to make her feel uncomfortable on the stand. Okay, and I want you to pay attention to that, because that is something that lawyers do. Try to make the person uncomfortable on the stand, because when you're uncomfortable and you're nervous or you're embarrassed about certain things that you have to divulge, that makes you sometimes not think clearly. Okay, you may forget things. You may misspeak. Okay, and they'll zone in on all of that. Okay, so on one occasion, around 2013, Mr. Combs had a freak-off set up at the Intercontinental Hotel in New York City, after which he was charged with tens of thousands of dollars in damages by the hotel. Upon information and belief, Mr. Combs' chief of staff, Tony Fletcher, paid the invoice charged by the hotel. Ms. Ventura was eventually instructed to use websites and escort services to find male S-workers to participate in the freak-offs. Mr. Combs told Ventura to search for large black cucumbers on the website. Y'all know what I'm talking about. Now, sometimes Mr. Combs would pay to fly male S-workers to his location, including to multiple cities in the United States as well as abroad. He required Ms. Ventura and his staff to help make these arrangements. Now, Mr. Combs' assistants would help to set up the freak-offs, including by setting up the hotel suites with baby oil and Astroglide. It's all so nefarious. Now, I just want you to think about this. All this stuff that I'm about to read you on this last couple of pages. Think about if you were Cassie and these things happened to you, how uncomfortable you would feel sitting on the stand in front of everybody, having to speak on this. So Mr. Combs always supplied Ms. Ventura and the S-workers with copious amounts of drugs before and during the freak-offs. Ms. Ventura was given ecstasy, Coca-Cola, GHB, ketamine, Mary Jane, and alcohol in excessive amounts during freak-offs, which allowed her to disassociate during these horrific encounters. Now, they're going to say, if you were on all of those illegal substances, how do you remember everything? How do we know that you're giving accurate details? Are you sure you didn't consent to some of these things? Because on the video, you look like you were enjoying it. You look like you were complicit. Did you fight back? Did you tell him no? Did you resist? Or did you just go along? These are the things they're going to say. And I told you all that before. Now, it became commonplace to get IV fluids in the days after a freak-off to recover from the excessive substances pushed upon her. Ms. Ventura was required to dress up in lingerie for a freak-off, and Mr. Combs insisted that she wear white nail polish to contrast her nails with the skin of the black men he hired to have relations with her. Now, let me tell you all something too. Because Diddy was it seems that he was very protective of Cassie, didn't even want her talking to other men or whatever, and then she ends up marrying the trainer that Diddy hired for both of them. Why do you think Diddy was comfortable with Alex Fine being around Cassie alone? Well, I'm so glad you asked, because Diddy likely didn't think that Cassie was attracted to white men, because Cassie was in the habit of dating black men. She was with Ryan Leslie. Then she went with Diddy when they had a breaking up or falling out or whatever. For a period of time, she was dating Kid Cudi. Okay? So he probably didn't think that she was even interested in him. Little did he know. So with that all being said, he would tell her to wear the white nail polish to contrast with the skin of the black men he hired to have relations with her. Now, during the freak-offs, Mr. Combs would instruct Ms. Ventura to pour excessive amounts of oil on herself. Mr. Combs would then instruct Ms. Ventura and the S workers to speak to each other, and then would specifically tell Ms. Ventura where to touch them. Now, I want you all to pay attention to this because this is important. See, that's why I'm glad I decided to go back over this, because here's the thing. Remember how I told you all that the defense keeps saying that these freak-offs were consensual, and that even the federal agent who allegedly spoke to the New York Post said that they saw some video footage of Diddy and other people, and then Diddy was mostly watching, maybe sometimes participating, but they could not tell if it was consensual or not. Well, this is why. Listen to the description. Now, picture it. You're watching a video of two people having relations and another person sitting by watching and recording. And you see this woman pouring oil all over herself while she's dressed in lingerie. And then she's touching these men. Does that look like she doesn't want to do it? It looks like she wants to do it. Please pay attention. She's touching these people, okay? She's pouring the oil all over her body. This is why his attorneys are saying that it was consensual, because that's how it's going to look. Please pay attention, but let's keep going. So, and then he would tell them to speak to each other. So then you're going to see a video of people talking to one another, okay? You're going to be able to see, they'll see the expressions on their faces. This is all going to be looking like it was consensual. I'm pretty sure, because this is how Cassie described it. Okay? And she's the one who had those tapes and gave them to the feds. So Ventura and the S workers would speak to each other and then would specifically tell Miss Ventura where to touch the S workers. Mr. Combs would say things like, grab that big black cucumber, and ask her, how does it feel? And he would direct her to perform for him. So picture it. All of this, it does look consensual. If we're going by how Cassie described these freak-offs, it absolutely is going to look consensual. And that is where the challenge is going to come in for the prosecution. They're going to have to prove that it wasn't, in fact, consensual. Now, during the freak-offs, in addition to directing Miss Ventura and masturbating with an M, Mr. Combs would use his phone, laptop, and tablet to film Miss Ventura having relations with the hired S worker. He treated the forced encounter as a personal art project, adjusting the candles that he used for lighting to frame the videos that he took. While Miss Ventura quickly deleted any photographs or video of the S acts if they were taken on her phone, Mr. Combs repeatedly made clear that he retained many videos of Miss Ventura during the FOs. Now, here is another inconsistency. Cassie says in the lawsuit that she actually deleted the things from her phone, and that Diddy was the one who retained the footage, and that Diddy held it over her head. She also said that. But let's not forget who gave the video footage to the feds. Cassie did. Okay, they've said that Cassie gave them 9 videos in December of 2023. So if Cassie gave them the videos, how did she have them in her possession? Because in the lawsuit, she clearly says that she deleted these things and that Diddy retained them. And she was not with Diddy when she gave them to the prosecution. She had not been with Diddy for about 5 or 6 years. So how did she have them? Better yet, the defense is going to also ask, why did you keep them? Were they memoirs? Were these things that you wanted to hold on to? Because Why would you keep something like that? And I want you all to think about this and ask yourselves. Now, I don't know why Cassie kept it. I honestly don't. I don't have a clue. But I do know that the defense is going to ask her that. Okay? And depending upon how she answers it, the jury's going to be looking with a side eye. Because if you're traumatized and you went through all of these things, why would you keep these videos? Why do you want them? Wouldn't you think that that would be something you don't ever want to see again because it's re-traumatizing you? You have to relive it every time you see these things. Mama Joycelyn says she's going to say she found the tapes and forgot she has them. No, that's not going to fly. Even if she said something like that, how's that going to fly? She found them. Well, if she did find them, why would she keep them? She literally says in the lawsuit that she deleted them. And where did she find them? She was nowhere around Diddy after 2018. So where did she find it? She had those tapes already in her possession. My question is, why did she keep them? Okay. Why did she keep them? Gwendolyn says, wow, Queen, that takes the wind out of the sails. Of course it does. Okay, of course it does. Now, I'm just telling you, I'm thinking like how the defense is going to think. Because if I was the defense attorneys, these are the questions I would be asking. Okay. So even when she deleted videos, Mr. Combs would tell Ms. Ventura that he was able to recover deleted videos from her devices. Now, on one occasion, he sat next to her on a flight and made her watch a video that she thought she had deleted, reinforcing her inability to escape the immense power that he held over her. Mr. Combs would pay the male S workers a few $1,000s in cash for their services. During some FOs, Mr. Combs would become extremely intoxicated and would hit Ms. Ventura in front of the male S workers. They're going to ask those male S workers about that. The prosecution is. They're going to also, now here's the thing. Are they going to bring in Jonathan Oddie, who's currently in prison himself, but the first S worker that we all heard about, who in 2018 told the police that he was with Diddy and Cassie at least 15 times? Now, Jonathan Oddie didn't say anything about it not being consensual when he was sitting there running his mouth to the police. I mean, that doesn't mean that it doesn't. I'm just saying that he didn't mention that. Okay, so I have questions as to how that's all going to play out. Now, Ms. Ventura was repulsed by Mr. Combs's demands, but between the physical beating and recognizing his incredible power and incredible temper, Ms. Ventura became petrified of her partner and boss and felt that she could not say no. He even would present her with lavish gifts prior or in the middle of freak-offs, seemingly acknowledging the ways in which these forced encounters constituted work for Miss Ventura and that he needed to compensate her for this work. At one point, he had given her so many designer bracelets for freak-offs and immediately following his brutal beatings that she felt that she was shackled by his presence. Okay, so with that all being said, I'm going to leave it right there. I'm going to leave it right there, okay? So what do you all think? And then also, let's not forget that she lied to her family about things that were going on, okay? Because that was brought up. She lied to her family about things that were going on. When her mother called the police on Diddy in 2016, she didn't press any charges. And so Diddy didn't go to jail. They're going to say, if you were so afraid, why didn't you say anything to the police when they got there? She could likely say that, you know, she felt like Diddy had connections in law enforcement. Who knows? But they're still going to bring it up. Okay, so anyway, with that all being said, the classic one said, right, I know I would have kept those videos for future blackmail. Well, here's the thing. If you're in fear of your life from someone, you wouldn't dare to blackmail them, would you? If someone has you so afraid for your very life, would you dare to blackmail them? Because Cassie said she was afraid for her life. Okay? She said she was afraid for her life. Now, I don't think she was afraid for her life. I don't think she was afraid for her life, because if she was afraid for her life, I don't think she would have gone back to visit Diddy after Kim Porter's demise. Okay? I don't think that, and I think also if she was afraid for her life, she wouldn't have been punching him upside the head. Okay, if I think somebody's going to take me up out of here and they have the ability to do so, I'm not going to be punching them upside the head in front of people and talking crazy, because that doesn't sound like somebody who's afraid. Okay, now I'm not saying that she wasn't afraid. I'm just telling you how the jury may look at it. That doesn't sound like somebody who's afraid. Okay, you punched him in the head walking out of the club when people could see. Another time it was mentioned that he was in the front seat, she was in the back, and she punched him, and he turned around and started punching her back. Okay? So Shawshana said maybe they'll use Stockholm Syndrome. Yeah, I don't think so. I absolutely don't think so, beloved. Stockholm Syndrome in this case, I don't think that's going to fly. And I don't think the prosecution would even try to use that in this case. Okay? Now, with that all being said, everyone please like and share. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. And here's the thing. Let's talk about Stockholm Syndrome real quick before we roll out of here. Now, Stockholm Syndrome, you see, that's more like a psychological response where the person is trying to protect the abuser. Okay? They have positive feelings about the abuser, even though this person could be holding them hostage, could be beating them, trafficking them, or whatever. But they still don't see this individual as a bad person. They see this person as someone that is sometimes even a protector to them, or someone that they need to feel indebted to. Okay? That's Cassie. That wouldn't, Stockholm Syndrome, in my opinion, doesn't apply in this case, because Cassie didn't seem to have any positive thoughts about the stuff that Diddy was doing. She didn't seem to have positive feelings about it. Okay, at least according to her own words. Okay. The defense is going to argue that if these things that she's alleging against Diddy are true, and if this is really how she felt about him, they're going to make it look as though, well, okay, if all this was going on, did you stay because of the money? Did you stay because of material gain, because of your career and all of that? And she's already admitted that. She's already said in her lawsuit that she was getting all these extravagant gifts and going on trips. She's already said in her lawsuit that basically he was giving her all these things or whatever, okay? She was getting all these gifts when he would beat her. I mean, I'm just saying, some of the stuff, of course, isn't going to fly, but the defense's job is to throw out everything that they can to try to discredit, to impeach her credibility. Okay? Nicole said trauma bond or entrapment. Well, I wouldn't say a trauma bond either, because that would mean that Diddy had been traumatized. Who traumatized him? Diddy was the one inflicting trauma, in my opinion. I don't think that Diddy has ever been traumatized. He may have, and if he was, I'd like to know. I would like to know, but I wouldn't say it's a trauma bond, because that's when people both suffer something traumatic, and that's how they relate to one another. When has Diddy ever been a victim? Okay. Mama Joycelyn said if she had Stockholm Syndrome, she would not testify against him. Exactly. Okay. Exactly. The first time they came up with the Stockholm Syndrome defense was in the case of Patty Hearst. Patty Hearst is a woman who was kidnapped sometime in the 70s. And these people who kidnapped her and held her for ransom, she protected them and defended them and spoke good of them, didn't want to testify against them. That's Stockholm Syndrome. Cassie is more than willing to testify against Diddy. She's turned over evidence to the prosecution. She clearly is not suffering from Stockholm Syndrome. Okay? Okay, so anyway, with that all being said, I love you all to life. I hope you enjoyed the broadcast. Everyone, please like and share. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't done so already. Be sure to click the notification bell so that you're notified each time the Queen Goddess goes live. And also, please be sure to double check and make sure you're still subscribed to the channel, especially if you haven't been receiving notifications, because you know people become mysteriously unsubscribed. With that all being said, I hope you enjoy the rest of this night, and I will see you all tomorrow morning for your morning wake-up call. In the meantime, each one teach one. That's how we grow and thrive. Do something productive, constructive, but never destructive. And always remember, beloveds, to keep the Most High first in your lives. Peace.
Gold all in my skin, God all in my blood, kings all in my circle. You touch one of mine and you're done. They show no love for the queen. Why you hating on me? Is it cause I'm free and I got Malcolm X in my jeans? I got dreams like King Luther, shed blood like Kunta. You ain't helping my people, I ain't got nothing to say to ya. I want all the smoke like hookah. Talking reparations, America won't be great until they give us compensation. I'm like, I'm the hottest right now. See a bunch of lames out here trying to jock on my style. They be doing too much. I'm the queen, it's too easy. It's like they all at Popeyes, how they be talking so greasy. I just sit back and laugh while these haters get madder. So nefarious how they don't want my pockets with cheddar. I tell them they can do better. These snakes in the grass can leave a bite on your ass, cause y'all be trusting too fast. I got my foot on the gas, other one on they necks. Dropping receipts on haters, you better show some respect. I'm never facing regrets, we only facing the threats. Running through every challenge like a relay, break no sweat. It's a cold game, so I got that blanket with me. Now that my people awaken, ain't no going to sleep. I do not play by my piece, this time I'm playing for keeps. You talking slick, but when I see you like them ends, we gon' meet. And I got gold all in my skin, God all in my blood, kings all in my circle. You touch one of mine and you done. They show no love for the queen. Why they hating on me? Is it cause I'm free and I got Malcolm X in my jeans and I got gold all in my skin, God all in my blood, kings all in my circle. You touch one of mine and you done. They show no love for the queen. Why they hating on me?